It was a bright afternoon at the city airport, a place always full of noise, people rushing in every direction, announcements echoing across the halls, and the constant hum of rolling suitcases. Among all the travelers, a young black woman walked calmly but with a quiet confidence that seemed to set her apart. She moved with purpose, her shoes clicking softly against the polished floor, a neatly packed carry-on rolling beside her. To most people, she looked like any other passenger trying to make her way through security and catch her flight. But there was something about her presence, graceful yet firm, polite yet unmistakably strong, that made her stand out if someone took a moment to notice. She had spent the last week traveling for work. Long flights, late meetings, and a constant stream of conversations had left her slightly tired, but she held herself with dignity. Her hair was neatly tied back, her outfit professional yet simple, and her small leather bag carefully organized. She had become used to traveling alone, airports were part of her routine, part of her life. But as she approached the security checkpoint that afternoon, she did not know that her ordinary day was about to take an extraordinary turn. Two uniformed police officers were stationed near the checkpoint, performing routine duties, or so it seemed. The woman noticed them glance at her as she drew closer. At first, she thought little of it. Security officers often scanned the crowd, and she had nothing to hide. But as she neared the line, one of the officers stepped in front of her. His eyes narrowed, and his posture suggested that he had already decided she was a problem. "Ma'am, hold up," he said, his tone sharper than necessary. "We need to check your bags." She paused, placing her hands calmly on her suitcase. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady, polite, and calm. "Is there a specific reason?" The officer hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to another. "Just routine," he said vaguely, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of something else, suspicion, maybe even bias. He motioned for her to open her bag. She did so immediately, unfolding the carefully packed contents. As he searched, his partner joined in, leaning over slightly, examining her belongings with an unnecessary intensity. "Where are you coming from?" the second officer asked, a hint of challenge in his voice. "Business trip," she answered simply, keeping her tone neutral. She did not volunteer any extra information. She had learned long ago that speaking less and staying calm was often the safest choice in uncomfortable situations. The officers exchanged a glance, one that she noticed instantly. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but to her trained eyes, it said more than words could. They were sizing her up, trying to see how she would react, testing boundaries she had no intention of crossing. She continued to remain calm, letting them examine her things, her eyes steady on them but her mind alert. She knew this was more than a standard security check. There was a tension in the air that was hard to ignore. Minutes felt like hours as they rifled through her bag. Her laptop, chargers, notebooks, even a neatly folded scarf. They examined everything with exaggerated scrutiny. Every question they asked seemed unnecessary. Every glance they gave her seemed to carry an unspoken accusation. She noticed the stares of other travelers, some curious, some uncomfortable. A few looked away, pretending not to see what was happening. Airports were crowded, yes, but there was an audience now, silently watching her. "Do you have anything to declare?" one officer asked, his voice slightly louder now, a hint of impatience creeping in. "No, sir," she answered, keeping her composure. She knew that staying calm was the only way to protect herself, to prevent the situation from escalating. Her mind raced through her options, but she refused to show fear. Fear would only encourage them. The officers' behavior grew more obvious. They were no longer simply performing a routine check. There was a sense of pressure in the way they spoke, a subtle push for compliance, for submission. "You know," one officer said, leaning slightly closer, "sometimes these things go easier if people cooperate." She looked at him carefully, recognizing the insinuation in his words. They were suggesting that she could make the situation go easier for herself if she followed an unspoken rule, if she gave in to something unfair. She did not flinch. She did not argue. She simply raised an eyebrow and kept her hands calmly on the suitcase. "I'm cooperating fully," she said evenly. "I've done nothing wrong." Her response seemed to unsettle them slightly. They were used to seeing people become nervous, flustered, or submissive. But here she was, calm and collected, not reacting in fear, not apologizing unnecessarily, not making excuses. It was as though she was a mirror reflecting their own unprofessional behavior back at them. The officers muttered between themselves for a moment, clearly frustrated. Then the first officer, his tone attempting to sound friendly but failing, said, "Well, just making sure everything is in order. You wouldn't want any trouble, would you?" "I wouldn't," she replied, her voice calm but firm. She did not raise her tone, did not insult, and did not submit. She understood the power dynamics at play, and she chose to navigate them with dignity and intelligence rather than fear. As the search continued, she noticed other travelers beginning to glance her way. Some whispered quietly to each other, others looked away quickly. She wondered how many of them realized what was happening, an ordinary traveler being singled out unfairly. She also wondered how many people would have responded differently, reacting with fear or anger. But she knew that showing control, patience, and confidence could turn this moment into one where she maintained power over herself, no matter the circumstances. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officers completed their search of her bag. They gave her a cursory nod and stepped back, as if waiting for her next move. She calmly zipped up her suitcase and checked the time. The flight would board soon, and she needed to continue. But there was a lingering tension in the air, an unspoken challenge hanging between them. She straightened her shoulders, adjusted her bag, and walked forward. Every step was measured, every movement intentional. She had not raised her voice, had not lost her composure, and had not given them the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. Yet she knew the encounter was far from over. Something had been tested here: her patience, their boundaries, and the unspoken assumptions that had led to this moment. As she moved past the checkpoint, she could feel the officers watching her, their expressions a mix of confusion, frustration, and perhaps the beginnings of respect. She did not look back, did not acknowledge them further. She had handled herself with dignity, and that was enough for now. She continued down the terminal, navigating the crowds with the same quiet confidence she had carried from the moment she entered the airport. But in the back of her mind, she began to plan how she would ensure that such behavior did not go unchecked. She had faced unfair treatment before, in smaller ways and larger, and she knew that confronting it required more than anger. It required courage, patience, and a strategic mind. By the time she reached her gate, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. The encounter had been tense, unfair, and uncomfortable, but she had maintained control of herself throughout. She knew that whatever came next, she would be ready. She had faced injustice before in her career and in her life, and she had learned that dignity and preparation could turn even the most hostile situations into opportunities for accountability. As she settled into her seat near the window, watching planes taxi and take off, she allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The airport, usually just a place of transit, had become a stage where the character of both herself and the officers had been revealed. She had remained composed, professional, and unafraid, and that had already changed the dynamic. It was a small victory, but it was meaningful. She pulled out her notebook, jotting down a few notes about the encounter while keeping an eye on the busy terminal. She did not know yet how this day would unfold, or how far the situation at the checkpoint might escalate. But she knew one thing clearly: she would not be intimidated, she would not be silenced, and she would not compromise her principles. In that crowded airport, among strangers and travelers in a rush, she had stood firm. She had faced prejudice with poise. And she had sent a quiet but unmistakable message, that courage and integrity were not diminished by the fear or arrogance of others. The flight announcement echoed through the terminal, signaling that boarding would begin shortly. She closed her notebook, stood up, and took a deep breath. Whatever challenges awaited her beyond the airport, she was ready to face them with the same calm, collected strength she had shown so far. And, unknown to the officers who had tried to intimidate her, the woman's journey both literally and professionally was only beginning. After she had settled into her seat by the gate, she thought the tense encounter at the security checkpoint might be over. But life often had a way of testing people more than once in the same day. As she waited for her flight, she noticed the same two officers again, this time near a different part of the terminal. They were casually leaning against a wall, speaking quietly but with frequent glances toward her direction. Her heart did not race, but her mind sharpened. She could sense that they had not forgotten the earlier encounter. She remained calm, observing their movements from across the gate area. She knew that sometimes people in positions of authority assumed they could intimidate someone without consequence. She also knew that maintaining composure was essential, especially in public spaces where witnessing eyes could influence how situations unfolded. She did not flinch, did not change her posture, and continued her work, keeping her notebook open but her mind alert. Minutes later, one of the officers approached her, stepping toward her with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Excuse me, ma'am," he began, trying to sound friendly, "we just wanted to have a quick chat." She looked up slowly, meeting his gaze. Her voice was calm but firm. "Of course. What is this regarding?" The officer hesitated, glancing at his partner for confirmation. "Well," he said, choosing his words carefully, "we noticed some unusual items in your bag earlier. You know, things that can cause trouble." She blinked slowly, maintaining her calm demeanor. "I'm not aware of any unusual items," she replied evenly. "Everything in my bag is personal or work-related. If you think otherwise, I'd like to know specifically what you mean." His smile faltered slightly. He clearly had expected a different reaction, perhaps fear or anxiety, something he could use to pressure her. But she remained composed, and that frustrated him. "It's just, you know how these things go," he said vaguely, as if hoping the ambiguity would make her nervous. She shook her head slightly. "I don't. I follow the rules and comply with regulations. If there's a problem, it should be addressed properly, according to procedure." The officer's partner stepped forward, now clearly trying to support his colleague's subtle attempt at intimidation. "Look, ma'am, sometimes these things can be solved quickly if everyone cooperates," he said, using the same phrasing from earlier. It was an unspoken suggestion that she could make things easier for herself. She kept her hands visible, resting on her bag, and did not flinch. "I am cooperating fully," she said again. "I've done nothing wrong. I would appreciate it if you followed proper procedure." The officers exchanged a brief glance, a silent conversation passing between them. One of them leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "You understand that some misunderstandings can be taken care of quietly?" She looked directly at him, her eyes steady and clear. "I understand," she said softly, but her tone carried a quiet firmness that left no room for misinterpretation. "However, I do not accept threats or pressure. If you have an official concern, you must follow the proper process. I am willing to comply with lawful requests, but nothing else." For a moment, there was silence. Other passengers nearby had noticed the interaction, their curious eyes flicking between the woman and the officers. Some whispered to each other quietly. She could feel the subtle energy of attention, yet she did not let it affect her. She had faced challenges before, in professional settings and in daily life, and she knew that calm confidence could shift the balance even in unfair situations. The first officer sighed, clearly frustrated that his usual tactics were not working. "Ma'am, we're just trying to be helpful," he said, though his words rang hollow. "We don't want any trouble for you." "I appreciate your concern," she replied politely, "but as I said, I follow the rules and procedures. That is how I avoid trouble. I cannot and will not respond to anything outside of official channels." The tension between them grew, and she noticed a few more passengers suddenly turning their attention toward the scene. She did not move, did not raise her voice, and did not let any trace of fear show. Her calmness, combined with the visible observation of bystanders, seemed to unsettle the officers. Then, the first officer made a subtle attempt at persuasion, leaning a little closer. "Sometimes it's easier if you just give us a little understanding. You know, help us avoid paperwork and formalities." She remained seated, her posture straight, her voice unwavering. "I cannot do that. If there is a concern, it must be handled properly. Anything else is inappropriate and I cannot comply." The officers paused, clearly surprised by her firmness. Most people in their position, especially those not accustomed to being challenged, would have responded with submission or silence. She responded with clarity, control, and poise. Her words were polite but unambiguous, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Minutes passed as they stood there, assessing the situation. Finally, one officer muttered something to his partner and stepped back slightly, as if reconsidering their approach. They had attempted to use pressure and fear, but it had not worked. Their body language shifted from dominance to uncertainty, from control to hesitation. "Ma'am," the second officer said, his tone slightly softer now, "maybe we overreacted? We just want everything to be smooth here." She nodded politely. "I understand," she said, her tone still calm. "And I expect the same professionalism from you. That is all I ask." The officers muttered quietly among themselves for a moment, then stepped aside. The subtle threat, the attempt at extortion, had failed. She had not given in, and her composed, respectful firmness had shifted the dynamic. Other passengers, still observing, quietly returned to their business, perhaps impressed by the woman who had faced authority without fear. As she collected her belongings and prepared to board, she reflected briefly on what had just occurred. It had been more than an inconvenience, it had been an attempt to manipulate and intimidate her. But she had met it with dignity, control, and adherence to proper procedure. She realized that these skills, poise, awareness, and clarity were essential in moments when people in authority tried to overstep boundaries. Boarding began, and she walked down the jet bridge with the same quiet confidence that had carried her through the entire airport. Each step was deliberate, a silent declaration that she was unafraid, composed, and fully aware of her rights and responsibilities. She had faced prejudice and attempts at manipulation, but she had handled them with intelligence rather than fear. Once on the plane, she found her seat by the window and settled in. She allowed herself a brief moment of relief, letting out a quiet breath. The encounter was over, for now, but she knew the lessons of the day would stay with her. Confidence, calmness, and knowledge of proper procedure were not just tools, they were shields against unfair treatment. As the plane took off, ascending above the city she had just left behind, she reflected on the power of dignity and presence. The officers had assumed they could pressure her because of her appearance, because of stereotypes that had no basis in reality. But she had shown them, in a subtle yet undeniable way, that intelligence, confidence, and courage could not be intimidated. The clouds outside stretched endlessly, white and soft, and she allowed herself a small, private smile. She had turned what could have been a humiliating encounter into a moment of quiet strength. She had not shouted, had not argued, and had not acted out of anger. She had remained composed, respected herself, and adhered to the law. Little did the officers know, she was not just any traveler. She had recently been appointed as a federal judge, a position of immense responsibility, insight, and influence. They had unknowingly tried to intimidate someone whose job was to uphold justice, fairness, and accountability. She thought about how ironic it was that they had attempted to manipulate her without knowing her true position. It was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, and that strength often lay in quiet confidence rather than loud authority. The world often underestimated those who appeared calm, polite, or reserved. Yet she knew that real power came from knowledge, preparation, and self-assurance. As the plane leveled off and the city below shrank into the distance, she allowed herself to relax fully, trusting that she had handled the situation with intelligence and poise. The officer's attempt at coercion had failed, but more importantly, she had maintained her integrity and dignity throughout. She opened her notebook once more, jotting down thoughts about what had happened and lessons she had learned. Each word she wrote reinforced her understanding that composure, awareness, and confidence were tools that could turn a challenging moment into an opportunity to assert fairness and self-respect. By the time the plane began its descent, she felt a renewed sense of readiness. She had faced an unexpected challenge with grace and had emerged not just unscathed, but stronger. The airport incident was a small, yet significant, example of the resilience and courage she carried with her in every part of her life and career. As the wheels touched down and the plane taxied toward the gate, she gathered her belongings, ready to continue her journey. She had met as she stepped off the plane and walked into the bustling airport terminal, a sense of calm determination settled over her. The previous encounters had tested her patience, awareness, and courage, but she felt stronger for having faced them. She knew that life often presented challenges in ways one could not predict, and the key was to meet each situation with composure and clarity. The terminal was crowded, a sea of travelers rushing to gates, baggage claim, and waiting areas. Announcements echoed through the loudspeakers, calling for connecting flights and reminding passengers to keep their boarding passes ready. She moved through the crowd with measured steps, aware of her surroundings but not distracted by the chaos. She had learned long ago that focus and calm could navigate even the busiest environments more effectively than haste or panic. Her destination was a city she had never visited before, a place filled with new opportunities, responsibilities, and unknown faces. She was here for an important meeting, one that could shape her career and open doors she had long aspired to reach. Yet, even as excitement fluttered in her chest, she maintained her composure. She had learned that being present in the moment, paying attention to details, and responding thoughtfully were more valuable than rushing ahead without thought. As she approached the baggage claim area, she noticed a young mother struggling with a stroller and a small child. The child had dropped a toy on the floor, and the mother was reaching down to pick it up while trying to keep the stroller steady. Without hesitation, she stepped forward to help. She bent down, picked up the toy, and handed it to the child with a warm smile. "Here you go," she said kindly. "That was a tricky one to grab." The mother looked up, surprised and grateful. "Thank you so much," she said. "It's been a bit chaotic with the crowd and the luggage." She smiled softly. "No problem at all. Everyone needs a little help sometimes." The small act of kindness reminded her that strength was not only about facing authority or challenges but also about helping others in their moments of need. She realized that her life had always been shaped not just by her achievements but by the compassion and understanding she extended to those around her. Finally, her luggage appeared on the conveyor belt, a simple black suitcase she had packed meticulously. She picked it up, ensuring it was secure, and moved toward the exit. The city outside the terminal was alive with movement, taxis, buses, and pedestrians weaving through the streets. The sunlight cast a warm glow over the buildings, and she felt a surge of energy and anticipation. Her first stop was the hotel where she would be staying. The cab ride through the city was a blur of colorful signs, bustling streets, and the constant rhythm of urban life. She observed everything carefully: the traffic patterns, the pedestrians, the shops, and the restaurants lining the roads. Each detail, she knew, was part of understanding a new environment, part of being prepared for the unexpected. Upon arriving at the hotel, she was greeted by a friendly receptionist who handed her the keycard with a polite smile. "Welcome," the receptionist said. "We hope you enjoy your stay." "Thank you," she replied warmly. "I appreciate your help." Her room was simple but elegant, with large windows offering a view of the city skyline. She placed her suitcase by the bed and took a moment to absorb the scene outside. The city seemed alive with possibility, each street and building holding stories waiting to be discovered. She knew that her next few days would be filled with meetings, decisions, and opportunities to demonstrate her abilities and integrity. After settling in, she took a short walk around the hotel area. The streets were alive with people, some hurrying to appointments, others leisurely enjoying the day. She noticed a small street vendor selling fresh fruit. The vibrant colors of oranges, apples, and bananas caught her eye, and she decided to buy a small basket. As she handed over the money, she exchanged a few friendly words with the vendor, who smiled warmly in return. Continuing her walk, she saw a group of school children in uniforms crossing the street, laughing and chatting as they walked. Their energy and innocence brought a smile to her face. She reflected on how important it was to nurture curiosity, kindness, and resilience from a young age. The world could be challenging, but children reminded her of hope, learning, and the possibility of a better future. Returning to her hotel, she prepared for the evening's dinner meeting. This was an opportunity to meet several influential figures in her field, people who could provide guidance, mentorship, and collaboration. She chose a simple yet professional outfit, one that conveyed confidence and approachability. Her preparation included reviewing notes, thinking about the conversation topics, and planning how to present her ideas clearly and respectfully. The hotel restaurant was softly lit, creating a calm and inviting atmosphere. As she approached the table, she was greeted by several individuals who welcomed her warmly. They exchanged polite introductions, and the conversation began. She listened attentively, contributing thoughtfully when appropriate, ensuring her words were clear and her intentions understood. Her calm demeanor and ability to articulate her ideas impressed the group. During the conversation, one of the guests mentioned a recent challenge in their organization, a situation that required careful negotiation and problem solving. She shared her insights, offering practical suggestions while remaining humble and respectful. Her perspective was valued, and she could see the respect growing in their eyes. She realized that influence was not about dominance or assertiveness alone, it was about knowledge, empathy, and the ability to communicate effectively. After the dinner meeting, she took a brief walk back to her room. The streets were quieter now, the city settling into the rhythm of evening. She reflected on the day, the airport challenges, the small acts of kindness, and the meaningful conversations. Each experience, she understood, contributed to her growth, shaping her ability to navigate complex situations with grace and intelligence. Once back in her room, she reviewed her schedule for the next day. Meetings, presentations, and discussions awaited her, each an opportunity to demonstrate competence, integrity, and respect. She knew that preparation was essential, but so was flexibility, the ability to adapt to unexpected situations, to respond calmly under pressure, and to maintain clarity of thought. Before going to sleep, she spent a few quiet moments writing in her journal. She reflected on the lessons of the day, that composure could disarm intimidation, that kindness could create connections, and that knowledge, combined with empathy, could inspire trust. These were not just professional tools but principles for life, guiding interactions and decisions in every setting. As she drifted off to sleep, she felt a sense of fulfillment. The day had been long, filled with challenges and opportunities, yet she had met each moment with integrity and awareness. She knew that the following days would bring new experiences, each with its own tests and rewards. But she was ready, prepared, confident, and aware of the power of calm intelligence. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the large windows, filling the room with warmth. She dressed efficiently, choosing attire that balanced professionalism and comfort. Breakfast at the hotel offered a chance to gather her thoughts and plan for the day ahead. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and reviewed her notes, mentally rehearsing the conversations and presentations she would have. Her first appointment was at a local organization, a place known for innovation and strategic thinking. She entered the building with a steady step, greeting the staff with warmth and professionalism. She was shown to a meeting room where several key individuals were already gathered. They welcomed her politely, and the conversation began. Throughout the morning, she navigated discussions about projects, budgets, and strategies. She listened carefully, asked insightful questions, and offered practical suggestions. Her calm confidence encouraged others to speak openly and collaboratively. By mid-morning, the group had begun to view her not just as a visitor, but as a valuable contributor. After the meeting, she took a short break, stepping outside to feel the fresh air and observe the city from a new perspective. She noticed the details, the patterns of traffic, the interactions between people, and the small acts of consideration and courtesy that went unnoticed by many. She appreciated these moments, understanding that awareness of surroundings and attention to small details could make a significant difference in life and work. Returning to her next meeting, she carried that sense of observation and attentiveness. This session involved negotiations, problem solving, and careful discussion. She remained composed, ensuring that her contributions were clear, fair, and constructive. By the end of the meeting, she had earned respect not only for her knowledge but also for her ability to maintain calm and focus under pressure. By midday, she had completed a series of meetings, each reinforcing her understanding of the importance of patience, preparation, and empathy. She took a quiet moment to reflect on the day so far. Life, she realized, was a balance of challenges and opportunities. Success did not come solely from ambition or intelligence, but from the ability to remain grounded, thoughtful, and considerate, even in the most complex situations. As she prepared to leave the building and continue her engagements for the afternoon, she felt a quiet confidence. The experiences of the past few days, from the airport encounters to the dinner and morning meetings, had reinforced her understanding of herself and her principles. She knew that challenges would continue to come, but she also knew that she had the tools, awareness, and integrity to meet them successfully. With a calm mind and a steady heart, she stepped back into the streets of the city, ready for whatever the day would bring. Each moment was an opportunity to act with purpose. The afternoon began with a sense of quiet anticipation. She had learned over the years that the real test of patience and skill often came after the initial excitement of arrival had faded. The morning's meetings had gone well, but the afternoon promised challenges of a different kind, situations that would require careful observation, understanding, and quick thinking. She walked through the city streets, noticing the changing rhythm as the day progressed. The sunlight, which had been bright and warm in the morning, now cast longer shadows across the sidewalks. People were moving at different speeds, some hurrying to appointments, others pausing to enjoy the scenery or engage in brief conversations. She took note of these small details, aware that every observation, no matter how minor it seemed, could provide insight into the city and the people she would encounter. Her next stop was an office known for its fast-paced environment and high expectations. As she entered the building, the hum of activity was immediate: phones ringing, people walking briskly between rooms, conversations overlapping. She paused for a moment to take a deep breath, centering herself. She knew that in such environments, remaining calm and composed was as important as any technical skill. She was shown to a conference room where several senior staff members were already waiting. They greeted her warmly but with an air of curiosity. She sensed immediately that this meeting would test her ability to communicate clearly under pressure, to present ideas succinctly, and to respond thoughtfully to questions she might not have anticipated. The discussion began with an overview of a current project, highlighting both successes and areas that needed improvement. She listened attentively, taking careful notes and observing the dynamics between the team members. She noticed how different personalities influenced the conversation. Some were assertive and fast-talking, while others were quiet, deliberate, and measured. Understanding these dynamics was crucial, she knew, for navigating the conversation effectively. When it was her turn to speak, she shared her observations in a clear and structured manner. She pointed out strengths while offering suggestions for addressing weaknesses. Her tone was calm and respectful, and she made sure to acknowledge the contributions of the team members. The room, which had been tense with anticipation, gradually shifted to a more collaborative atmosphere. People nodded in agreement, and some even asked for her input on specific challenges. One challenge in particular required careful attention: a discrepancy in the project timeline that had caused some delays. She suggested practical solutions, emphasizing both efficiency and attention to quality. Her suggestions were not only logical but also considerate of the team's existing workload and responsibilities. The group appreciated her approach, recognizing that her perspective was both knowledgeable and empathetic. After the meeting, she stepped out of the building for a brief walk. The city had changed again with the late afternoon sun, streets now filled with a mix of business commuters and casual strollers. She paused at a small park, observing children playing while parents watched nearby. The laughter and energy of the children brought a sense of lightness to her mind, a reminder that even in busy, stressful environments, there was always room for joy and human connection. She returned to the office building for a second meeting of the afternoon, this one more focused on strategic planning and long-term objectives. This session required not only knowledge but also foresight and creativity. She listened carefully to the proposals presented, considering their implications and potential outcomes. When she spoke, her comments reflected both practicality and vision, highlighting possibilities that others had not considered while remaining grounded in reality. During the discussion, a senior member posed a challenging question that required immediate analysis and a thoughtful response. She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts, and then responded with clarity and confidence. Her answer addressed the concern directly while also offering a broader perspective. The group responded positively, impressed by her ability to think quickly without losing composure. By the end of the meeting, she had not only contributed valuable insights but had also earned the respect of the team. She realized that success in such environments was as much about attitude and approach as it was about knowledge and skill. Patience, observation, empathy, and clear communication were all essential tools for navigating complex professional landscapes. After leaving the building, she felt a sense of accomplishment, but she knew the day was not yet over. She had a dinner engagement scheduled with several influential people in the community. This meeting was as much about relationship building as it was about discussion of projects and ideas. She understood the importance of making a positive impression while remaining authentic and genuine. The dinner venue was an elegant yet inviting restaurant, softly lit and filled with quiet conversation. She was greeted warmly by the host and introduced to other attendees. The atmosphere was relaxed, but there was an underlying sense of expectation. She reminded herself to listen attentively, speak thoughtfully, and remain engaged without dominating the conversation. Over the course of the evening, she engaged in discussions ranging from professional experiences to personal stories of resilience and growth. She shared her own journey in a way that was honest yet measured, highlighting challenges she had overcome and lessons she had learned. Her sincerity and humility resonated with the group, and she noticed that people were drawn to her not just for her knowledge but for her character. One conversation stood out in particular. A guest spoke about a community initiative that had faced significant obstacles but had ultimately succeeded through persistence and collaboration. She asked thoughtful questions, seeking to understand both the challenges and the strategies used to overcome them. Her interest was genuine, and the speaker responded enthusiastically, sharing insights and experiences that might not have been mentioned in a more formal setting. As the dinner concluded, she reflected on the importance of connection. Professional success, she realized, was deeply intertwined with relationships, trust, and understanding. Knowledge alone could open doors, but respect, empathy, and integrity ensured those doors remained open and led to meaningful opportunities. Returning to her hotel, she felt the weariness of a long day but also a deep sense of fulfillment. Each experience, from the airport to meetings, from observation of the city to engagement with community members, had reinforced the importance of balance. Strength was not only about action but about reflection. Confidence was not only about skill but about awareness and understanding. Success was not only about achievement but about the quality of interactions and the values guiding them. Before retiring for the night, she took time to review her journal, writing down reflections, observations, and lessons learned. She noted how patience had allowed her to understand others better, how attentiveness had revealed opportunities for meaningful contribution, and how empathy had strengthened relationships in ways that knowledge alone could not. Writing these reflections helped her internalize the day's lessons and prepared her mind for the challenges and opportunities of tomorrow. As she settled into bed, she thought about the city outside her window, the streets that had been alive with energy, the people who had crossed her path, the small acts of kindness she had witnessed and contributed to. Life, she understood, was a series of interconnected moments, each shaping experiences, relationships, and growth. Her journey was not just about her own goals but about the positive impact she could have on those around her. Sleep came gradually, each moment of rest reinforcing her mind and body for the next day. Dreams were calm, reflective, filled with images of conversation, laughter, and understanding. She knew that the following day would bring its own tests, challenges, and opportunities, but she felt ready. Prepared, composed, and aware, she trusted in her ability to meet each moment with clarity and purpose. The next morning, sunlight streamed through her window once again, illuminating the city in a warm, golden light. She prepared for a day that promised more meetings, discussions, and exploration. Breakfast was quiet and nourishing, a time to gather strength and focus. As she ate, she reviewed her schedule, planning strategically while leaving space for flexibility and adaptability. Her first engagement involved visiting a local community center, a place dedicated to education and social development. She was greeted by a group of passionate individuals committed to making a difference in the lives of others. She listened carefully as they described programs, challenges, and successes. Her questions were thoughtful, reflecting genuine interest and a desire to contribute meaningfully. During the visit, she observed the interactions between staff, volunteers, and participants. The energy, dedication, and resilience of the people involved were inspiring. She realized that impact was often created not by grand gestures alone but by consistent effort, attention to detail, and care for the well-being of others. She offered suggestions and support where appropriate, always mindful to respect existing structures and processes. By midday, she had gained insight into the center's operations and the community it served. She left with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that professional success was enriched by engagement with the community and that personal growth was intertwined with empathy and service. Her afternoon involved another series of meetings, each requiring observation, strategic thinking, and clear communication. She navigated discussions with calm confidence, ensuring that her contributions were constructive, respectful, and actionable. She noticed that her ability to remain composed, even under pressure, encouraged collaboration and trust among the group. As evening approached, she returned to her hotel for a brief moment of reflection. The day had been long, filled with learning, engagement, and meaningful connection. She recognized the value of patience, preparation, and presence, understanding that each day offered lessons not only in professional skill but in human connection and personal growth. With quiet determination, she prepared for another evening engagement, mindful that every interaction, whether in meetings, casual conversation, or observation, was an opportunity to learn, contribute, and grow. Each moment, she realized, was part of a larger journey, a path shaped by choices, reflection, and intention. The morning light came gently through her window, bringing with it a quiet promise of a new day. After several days of intense activity, she felt both weary and energized, a strange but familiar combination. Her mind was alive with ideas, reflections, and possibilities. Today, she knew, would be about bringing together everything she had learned so far, testing her understanding, and making meaningful decisions that could have lasting effects. She began her day with a light breakfast, enjoying the simple pleasures of food and a few moments of stillness. She reflected on the people she had met over the past few days, their dedication, creativity, and resilience. Each encounter had left an impression, teaching her lessons in communication, leadership, and human connection. She realized that success was not simply about achieving personal goals but about recognizing the value in others, understanding their perspectives, and contributing positively to the community around her. After breakfast, she prepared for her first engagement of the day, a meeting with a group of young professionals working on an innovative project aimed at improving the city's infrastructure. The project was ambitious, and the team faced numerous challenges. She was impressed by their enthusiasm and commitment despite the obstacles. As she entered the office, she noticed the energy in the room, ideas flowing freely, whiteboards filled with sketches and notes, and a sense of determination in every face. The discussion began with each team member presenting their work, sharing both successes and difficulties. She listened attentively, taking mental notes of the processes, strategies, and challenges mentioned. When it was her turn to speak, she offered insights that were practical, constructive, and considerate of the team's resources and goals. Her suggestions focused not only on technical solutions but also on collaboration, communication, and the importance of maintaining morale during challenging phases of a project. One young team member asked a difficult question, one that required immediate problem solving. She paused briefly, carefully considering the situation, and then responded with a thoughtful solution that addressed both immediate concerns and long-term implications. Her answer was met with appreciation, and a sense of relief seemed to pass through the room. The team recognized not only her knowledge but also her ability to remain calm and focused under pressure, a quality that inspired confidence and trust. Following this meeting, she took a short walk through the city to clear her mind and gather her thoughts. The streets were lively, filled with a mix of people commuting, shopping, and enjoying the day. She observed the subtle rhythms of the city, the way people navigated their environment, how small acts of kindness could be seen in gestures as simple as holding a door open or offering directions to someone lost. She reflected on how small actions, when done consistently, could have a significant impact, both professionally and personally. Her next engagement was with a local school, where she had been invited to speak to students about leadership, perseverance, and personal growth. She walked into the classroom and was greeted by curious and attentive faces. She began by sharing her own journey, emphasizing the importance of determination, learning from mistakes, and embracing challenges as opportunities. She made sure to speak in a way that was relatable, using simple examples and encouraging students to ask questions and share their thoughts. The students were engaged and enthusiastic, asking questions about obstacles she had faced, moments of doubt, and how she overcame them. She answered each question honestly, highlighting not only strategies for success but also the importance of character, empathy, and resilience. She noticed that as the discussion continued, the students' initial curiosity transformed into thoughtful reflection, and some even shared personal stories and aspirations. The interaction reminded her that leadership was not just about authority or achievement, it was about guidance, inspiration, and empowering others to recognize their own potential. After leaving the school, she returned to her hotel to prepare for an afternoon engagement with a local organization focused on community development. This meeting was particularly important because it involved coordinating efforts among multiple stakeholders, each with different priorities and perspectives. She understood that her role was to listen carefully, mediate where necessary, and offer solutions that balanced the needs of everyone involved. The meeting was intense but productive. Conflicting opinions arose, and tensions sometimes flared, but she remained composed, listening attentively and validating each perspective before proposing compromises. She emphasized shared goals and reminded everyone of the broader mission, encouraging collaboration over competition. Gradually, the room's atmosphere shifted, and by the end of the meeting, consensus had been reached on several key decisions. She left with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her ability to facilitate understanding and cooperation had made a tangible difference. As evening approached, she was invited to attend a local cultural event celebrating art, music, and community achievements. The event was vibrant, filled with music, laughter, and creativity. She observed artists displaying their work, musicians performing, and people of all ages enjoying the atmosphere. She walked through the venue, taking time to engage with the participants, appreciating their efforts, and acknowledging the importance of preserving and promoting culture in the community. During the event, she met an elderly woman who had dedicated her life to teaching art to underprivileged children. They spoke at length about challenges, rewards, and the transformative power of education and creativity. The woman's stories were inspiring, reminding her that meaningful impact often required long-term commitment, patience, and unwavering belief in one's mission. She thanked the woman for her work and promised to support initiatives that could further enrich the lives of these children. Later that evening, she joined a small group of community leaders for a dinner discussion. The conversation was lively but respectful, covering topics such as urban planning, social programs, and strategies for sustainable development. She contributed insights based on her observations and experiences over the past few days, offering practical suggestions and emphasizing collaboration across sectors. The group responded positively, appreciating her balanced approach, thoughtful analysis, and genuine interest in supporting community growth. As the night deepened, she walked back to her hotel under a sky full of stars. The quiet of the evening contrasted sharply with the bustling activity of the day, offering a perfect moment for reflection. She thought about the journey she had undertaken, not just the physical travels, but the experiences, connections, and lessons gained along the way. She realized that growth and success were not measured solely by accomplishments but by the quality of relationships, the ability to learn from every encounter, and the willingness to contribute positively to the lives of others. Back in her room, she took out her journal and began writing. She reflected on the people she had met, the challenges she had faced, and the moments that had taught her the most. She wrote about the young professionals, the students, the community leaders, and the everyday citizens who had shared their stories. She noted the importance of empathy, active listening, patience, and integrity, understanding that these values were the foundation of meaningful influence and lasting impact. She also reflected on her personal growth. The journey had tested her patience, resilience, and adaptability. It had required her to step out of her comfort zone, engage with diverse perspectives, and make decisions under pressure. She recognized that each experience, whether challenging or rewarding, had contributed to her development and had strengthened her ability to navigate complex situations with grace and intelligence. Before turning in for the night, she took a few moments to meditate, focusing on her breath and allowing her mind to settle. She thought about the future, not with anxiety, but with curiosity and optimism. She understood that there would always be new challenges, unexpected obstacles, and opportunities for learning. What mattered most was her approach remaining open, compassionate, and committed to continuous growth. As she drifted into sleep, she felt a sense of fulfillment and peace. The days had been long and demanding, but they had also been rich with experience, insight, and connection. She knew that the journey was ongoing, that there would always be more to learn, more people to meet, and more ways to make a positive difference. Yet, she also knew that she had the tools, perspective, and resilience to face whatever lay ahead. The next morning, she awoke feeling refreshed and determined. The city outside her window was alive with energy once again, a reminder of the endless possibilities each day could bring. She prepared for another day of engagement, confident that her experiences had prepared her to meet challenges with clarity, contribute meaningfully to the community, and continue her personal and professional growth with purpose and integrity. Her journey, she realized, was not defined by a single event or achievement but by the accumulation of moments of learning, connection, reflection, and action. Every person she had met, every challenge she had faced, and every success she had celebrated had shaped her understanding of herself and the world around her. She understood that true success was a balance of knowledge, empathy, resilience, and action, and that meaningful impact was measured not only by outcomes but by the care, thoughtfulness, and integrity with which one approached each day. As she stepped out into the morning light, ready to embrace the next chapter, she carried with her the lessons, insights, and experiences of the journey so far. She walked with confidence and humility, aware that growth was continuous, that learning never ended, and that the most meaningful moments were those shared with others, rooted in understanding, kindness, and the pursuit of excellence. The city stretched before her, full of opportunity and possibility. She was ready to meet it head-on, equipped not only with skill and knowledge but with awareness, empathy, and purpose. Every step she took was a reflection of the journey she had traveled, a journey that had taught her that the true measure of life's value lay not in achievements alone but in the lives touched, the relationships nurtured, and the character built along the way.